Okay. Hail cheaters. Welcome to the Always Cheating Podcast. My name is Josh. I'm here with Brandon. Brandon, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Josh, we are live from the Blue Wire studios at Wynn Las Vegas. Thank you to Blue Wire for hosting us here. Everybody here is amazing. For those of you listening on the podcast feed, feel free to jump over to YouTube, search the Always Cheating Podcast. You can see us live in living color. We're shooting video here in the studio as well. Josh, do you feel like you look good? We can see ourselves on the monitor here.
I feel good. And if you're listening to the audio, we already get credit for the download. You know, so you can jump right over to that YouTube.
Right. So on today's pod, it's going to be the FPL team previews, a continuation of last week's drop where we predicted the Premier League table, teams 20 to 11. Somewhat controversial. Are we going to ruffle a few more feathers this week?
I think so, yeah. Leeds in 19th. That has not gone over well. So I guess we had them 18th, whatever, in the relegation.
They're still going down, unfortunately.
Yeah. So we're gonna jump into 10-1. Just quickly, though, Brandon, I mean, we're in Las Vegas. We flew out last night. Yeah. How has the Vegas trip been so far for us?
Yeah, how is it?
I think it's been great. I mean, we actually won money playing blackjack, which we never do. So that's like a huge win already. I mean, it's always going to go away.
That's not going to last, Josh.
It's not going to last. Yeah. We went shopping, so that was always fun.
It's been a real soul soothing weekend for us, right? Like just guys shopping.
That's true. I wasn't begging for like 2 hours of shopping today, but we're both wearing new shoes, so there you go. We discussed advancements in virtual reality and my. What I think is the failings of the VR industry, Brandon. We'll talk about that later. That's for a.
I feel like that is a separate pod. I do think your ideas were actually pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. I'm an innovator, you know. So we'll talk more about that maybe on an upcoming Patreon pod or something. And then tomorrow we're going to be watching the. I guess it'll be like at 9 a.m. here in Las Vegas. We're going to be watching the Charity Shield. So which should be really instructive.
The Community Shield, Josh.
Is it? Yeah. Didn't they used to call it the Charity Shield? I feel like that's what they used to call it back in the day.
Yeah. Did the word charity somehow fall out of favor?
I think they stopped giving the money to charity, and so now they don't call it the Charity Shield anymore.
Right. It all goes to far-flung oil barons now. Before we jump into those team previews, though, and enough about Vegas. Vegas is great. We're going to be here for another couple of days. We're looking forward to that. Just a few quick promotional notes. For those of you who want to say thanks to us, me and Josh the Cheaters, and get more FPL content in return, please check us out at patreon.com/alwayscheating, where you can get more FPL content. Preseason bonus stuff is in full swing. Hundreds of managers are out there sharing strategy on our Slack message board. We've got weekly ad-free bonus pods running, plus we've got leagues, monthly leagues, Josh, where you're going to get a free T-shirt. We're giving away a T-shirt every month.
Monthly T-shirt giveaways.
Yeah, so head over to our Patreon page and support us if you can. And, Josh, one last thing, a shout-out for our very first live ticketed event happening Saturday, September 10th. We're going to throw a graphic up on the big board right now. New York City, September 10th. Visit Fest. Let me get that out. Fest-nyc.com for details and tickets. We're going to be watching Game Week 7 matches together along with a live podcast recording. Yeah, we're in Las Vegas doing a studio recording. Today, September 10th, Josh, you and I are going to be in Brooklyn with all of our friends and our fans doing a raucous recording. That's going to be fun. Yeah. You can also have a chance to meet Fantasy Football Scout founder Mark Southerns and Premier League pundit Gianni Buttici, two legends of the FPL game, both of whom are flying over from the UK, along with Ed, who leads the Fest team. We're going to have an FPL quiz, a kick around in the venue's indoor pitch, and so much more. That's fest-nyc.com, and we hope to see you all there.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I mean, we already have, it looks like we're going to be well over 100 people at that event, which is really exciting. So, this is like as quick as we've ever gotten through the early episode promo stuff.
Because I think if you go back to our teams 20 through 11 team preview, that clocked in at an hour and 50 minutes. Do you think we can do better than that, Josh? And by better, I mean maybe a little shorter.
I mean, the pace we're going, this is going to be like a 37-minute pod. So I think we can. Yeah. So let's jump right into it. Well, just as a reminder, you can go back and you can listen to teams 20 through 11. That podcast is already is already up. And what we're doing is just to make things a little bit different, because normally when you do A to W, whatever the last team is alphabetically.
It's going to be Wolves this year.
Yeah, by the time you get to Wolves, we're out of energy. That team never gets any attention. So thought we'd mix it up a little bit. And so we predicted the Premier League table, 20-11. Now we're doing 10-1. So I think we should just jump right into it and do the top 10.
So who do we have at number 10? So I feel like, if you're a supporter of this club, are you going to feel good being at number 10 before we mention the team, or are you going to feel a little disappointed?
I mean, Crystal Palace finishing in 10th. I mean, to me, that's top of the table. I think they'd be thrilled. I mean, especially, so they, basically, as a quick recap, Roy Hodgson, steered the ship for many years, did a very nice job. And then Patrick Vieira comes in, takes them to mid-table finish. And they were solid offensively and defensively. The big, concern going into next season is they lost Conor Gallagher, right? This amazing player, great hair, great energy.
Wonderful hair. I want to know how he balances how often he washes his hair, because there's a certain look you
can't
get.
Wash that kind of hair.
Get
too
some
much.
natural grease in there that helps it, sort of stay down, stay manageable.
You certainly can't shampoo it more than once a week. No. I mean, it's going to mess it up otherwise.
Yeah, he does mail order for actual horse shampoo, like horse mane shampoo.
So he was great, and the club's hoping a Cheek Decore, another Decore joining the league, Brandon, can get close to approximately what he did. That's a little bit different. He's $5 million in fantasy, but he's he's more of a box to box player. It doesn't seem, based on his previous track record, that he has the kind of goal scoring instincts, aggression that Conor Gallagher has. So I'm not sure what we're going to be getting from him. So, but the whole thing with Palace to start the season, from a fantasy perspective, is that poor early fixtures. So they're a full-on wait-and-see club. I wouldn't really recommend bringing in anybody from their squad early on, because they play Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City in 3 of the first 4 matches. Yep. From there, it's not bad, right? So once you get into game week 5, but no one's thinking that far ahead right now, right? Once you get into game week 5, it looks a little bit better. Brentford, Newcastle, Man United, Brighton.
I feel like with Palace, if you flash back, like 8 years ago when they first gained their recent promotion to the top flight, it seemed like 10 weeks into the season, they were always bottom and in trouble. And the new Crystal Palace, the current Crystal Palace under Hodgson, now Vieira, you always know that no matter how tough the opening fixtures might be, they're still going to be in the mix come the holidays.
Yeah, and I think what is in the mix?
Well, not in the mix for not being relegated, I guess I could say.
So here's who they've got, right? So in terms of who you might want to target at some point this season, you got Will Zaha, perennial, a decade on at this point. I think it was 2012 when Palace first came up. So a decade on, he's been there almost the entire time. He had that kind of short spell at Man United, didn't work out, went back. Had his best ever return last season, so really shined under Vieira. He had 14, his best ever returns in goals and fantasy points, right? So he had 14 goals last season, 150 total points. This, however, was against an XG of 9.4, so pretty significant overperformance. And then the non-penalty XG was 4.
It's
right?
incredible.
So take Pens away, he's on 4 goals last season, roughly, right? Based on what you'd expect him to get. So,
but if you look at the goals he's scoring, he has really mastered that bending shot from 16, 18 yards out. He can really pick his spot with his shot, which is why I think he can overperform his XG like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I feel like he, I don't know. It's like you kind of know what you're getting with him. Like he can bend one from out, outside the box, but it does feel like in general, you kind of know what you're getting with Patrick, with Will Zaha. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the player that I'm kind of most interested in line with Zaha would be Abrichi Eze, who had some bad injury problems over the last couple of years. 5.5 midfielder though, really dynamic, really exciting. Like I remember the end of I guess it was the 2020-2021 season. He, really started to shine. Immediately got injured.
Yeah.
And then looked good when he came back at the end of last season.
Right.
Scored twice already in preseason. Had 4 goals and 8 assists the previous season. So, there's a lot to like, about Eze. I mean,
and this is when people say they're concerned about Palace because Conor Gallagher isn't coming back. He might play a little bit farther forward than Gallagher did, but he's a great carrier of the ball. I think he can bring a certain level of creativity that will make up for the lack of that dynamism of Conor Gallagher.
I hope so. I like Palace.
I'm getting that sense.
I like the team. I want to go to Selhurst Park. For anyone who doesn't know, the Ted Lasso TV show is filmed at Selhurst Park. Yeah. So it's kind of like, whether you. I like the show.
Sure.
Now it feels like because people didn't like the second season, you have to
Yeah.
But
we're not here to put Ted Lasso on trial. We're talking about Palace.
Exactly. So you have Eze, who I think is one to watch. You have Michael Elise, who's at 5.5 million as well. A lot of 5.5 million midfielders right now. It's the 5.5 million mids and the 8 million are the two. Okay. Which has got tons of options. He's only 20, but he's excited the fan base, especially the second half of last season. Mm-hmm. He hasn't played in preseason due to a foot injury. So again, just wait and see is kind of the recurring theme with Crystal Palace here. Then you've got Bateta, Edouard, Benteke. That's avoid, in my opinion. I would just stay away from all of them. Keeper-wise, it's kind of interesting. They signed Johnstone. Remember Johnstone, the West Brom keeper?
I do, yeah. I do. Yeah, not a bad keeper, right?
Not bad. Yeah.
But you're not considering him for a game week 1 draft.
Well, he's been injured in preseason, so I think he's it's not clear if he's going to be ready by game week 1 anyway. So I just sort of stay away from him. Decore, 5 goals across 117 appearances. This is the Conor Gallagher replacement we were talking about. Yeah. So not really feeling that. What is cool? They signed an American. 22-year-old Chris Richards. A lot of Americans joining the Premier League this year.
Yeah, Chris Richards is interesting because as a follower of the U.S. men's team, don't really know a whole lot about him. He's like had precious few caps, but suddenly he's summited the Premier League mountain.
It's happened to Landon Donovan too. Like going to Bayern isn't always sometimes you go to a club that's almost too big.
Yeah,
I mean, Pulisic is almost dealing with this right now, right? It's like you almost want to be Clint Dempsey sometimes. Be like the best player on a bottom half of the table.
You want to be Will Zaha.
Yeah, you want to be Will Zaha. Exactly. That's not a bad place to be.
Yeah.
So. Anyway, what was I talking about? Sam Johnstone?
Yeah, you're talking about Johnstone. What's up with Johnstone?
Well, he's 4.5 million. He's, probably going to take the spot from Gaeta at some point. But either way, enough worry, enough ambiguity there. Yeah. It's just a total stay away from me. Defensively, you've got Mark Gahey, who I think a lot of us really liked. Center back who really, played well. I mean, maybe not reflected totally in the returns. 2 goals, 1 assist, 11 clean sheets, but. I think he's kind of a lock for that team. He's also playing to see if he can get into the English team for the World Cup. So there's a chance he could be a center back for the World Cup. It's kind of this theme that we're going to see throughout the fall is a lot of players playing for a spot, in the Qatar World Cup. Yep. I can't remember exactly do you remember what game week it is when the season effectively goes to a stop? I think it's like November 12th is the day, and then I think it's like game week 15 or something.
Yeah, what we have talked about ad nauseum as Americans, as we know, the World Cup does open the day after our big holiday, Thanksgiving. So, yes. but of course, the Premier League's got a halt to allow all these players to travel, get with their national teams, warm up a bit.
Does it actually kick off that day, or I think it's just that England and the U.S. play that day?
Right. I got you.
So on
it kicks off for me then.
So on Thanksgiving we celebrate our freedom from the yoke of English tyranny.
Yeah.
And then the next day we play them in the World Cup, decide who is the greater country.
Sure. 3 Lions, this only ends one way. We've already fought a war over it. Look, can you quickly go back to the mids, the 5.5 mids, because last episode we talked a lot about Pedro Neto and Wolves. And if you're new to FPL, you might be wondering, why are we so high on Wolves and Pedro Neto to start when you've got Crystal Palace finishing, like around 5 places higher than them on the table, and it's all down to the fixtures for Palace and a little bit of uncertainty with the lineup.
I also think there's a slot consideration that you can think about. It's a little different than for somebody who's maybe new to fantasy and isn't used to pricing and price tiers and sort of working within a budget. In fantasy, if you want to bring somebody in a waiver, like American style fantasy, you want to bring someone in the waiver wire, you just bring them in. Right, but in Premier League fantasy, you really need to make sure they fit into your price budget. So if you want a 5.5 million player, part of the value of that is they're like 16 options, right? And so you can move very easily from one to the other if somebody kind of takes off. Kind of the same with the 8 million midfielders. Whereas you have this kind of weird, like a Bruno Fernandez who's 10 million, puts you in a weird spot, you know, in terms of like what you do with him, what you do with the money left over, you know. Otherwise, but it's kind of nice you can just move right from one to the other with these 5.5.
Right.
With all that said, stay away from Crystal Palace early on. I would not target them. I would stay away. And I think I'm excited about we put them in the top half of our table, but I think we can move on to our number 9 team.
All right, number 9, Leicester City. We're placing them at number 9, and I think it's odd because we're more excited about the Palace team. I am kind of down on Leicester, but you do have to appreciate the quality of players that Leicester does have. Brendan Rodgers is a manager who is generally fun to talk about, maybe take the piss out of from time to time.
He's David Brent. I mean, exactly. Or Michael Scott. Yeah.
But you have to admit, through his career, he more often than not kind of knows what he's doing. So I think Leicester sort of is getting the benefit of the doubt coming out of the preseason, going into the start of the season. We've got them at number 9. Now, they had a weird season last in that it was a relatively unremarkable Premier League campaign, but they went all the way to the final of the Europa Conference League.
Right.
And losing that, it's all just sort of like you get to the end of the season for Leicester and you're just like, what did we do it all for?
I think it was the semifinal.
The semifinal, right? Yeah.
Even worse in some ways.
Right, yeah. At least they didn't even get the great day out for the final. So if you look now, just looking ahead to the 22-23 season for Leicester, the preseason results, one man emerges, and it is Harvey Barnes. And shout out to our friends at FPL. I think that they compared Harvey Barnes to who could be the Jared Bowen of this season. Right. The sort of under the radar attacking mid who could break out for 18 goals. Harvey Barnes has already scored 3 goals in the preseason. You look back at last season, lots of injuries for him. He still came out with 6 goals and, can you believe this, 12 assists? I really don't know how he accomplished that.
I had him for like 8 weeks, and I got like 0 goals and 0 assists. So I don't know where these 12 assists came from.
Yeah. So the guys who have led Leicester in preseason minutes going into the start of the season, Barnes, Dewsbury Hall, we'll talk about him in a moment, Patson Daka, he was a new signing for Leicester last season, has basically become a backup to whoever is the preferred striker, whether it's Iheanacho or Jamie Vardy.
I was excited about Daka going into last season.
You were very pro Daka. Yeah. It's not come to pass, which is not to say that it can't. And Wesley Fofana, who is a returning center back, spent much of last season on the sideline with injury. I think with Johnny Evans kind of getting on in age, and Amarte probably not preferred to have him there. And God, I'm blanking on the name of the Turkish center back. Remind me, the guy.
Soyuncu?
Yeah, Soyuncu. So if Brendan Rodgers had his way, he'd play Fofana. He'd start him at center back.
Yeah.
And he's shown that in preseason minutes. One worrying note with Leicester is there's not been a lot of action for them in the transfer market this summer. The only real rumor is that legendary keeper Kasper Schmeichel could be on his way out. Sounds like
weird.
Yeah,
it's a weird move.
So it sort of smacks of something happening in the locker room, and Schmeichel's so much of his identity, apart from him being the son of a probably more famous goalkeeper, is him being Leicester City's talisman. Him trying to rescue the owner and other people from a helicopter crash. From him basically just being an incredible goalkeeper.
I guess it sounds exhausting when you put it that way.
yeah, maybe
he's worn out.
Yeah, exactly. His tour, his watch has ended, and if he's got an opportunity to go collect a big paycheck from Nice, why not? That opens a door in fantasy because right now, basically the only playable goalkeeper that Brendan Rodgers has is Danny Ward, who is priced at 4.0. So that is a potential. I don't think anybody would recommend take Danny Ward as your starting.
I mean, if he was the only keeper, sure. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would be starting Danny Ward in game week 1. You know, a $4 million starter. I mean,
you could at least set him as your backup keeper because you're not going to find anybody cheaper than that at the moment. Other good guys from Leicester that stand out as you're looking at your game week 1 draft, you've got Ricardo Pereira, who is a very buccaneering fullback. 1 goal and 3 assists last season, and I think there is more potential for him. The appeal with Ricardo Pereira now is 4.5. I mean, I think we should talk a little bit about Leicester's opening fixtures to say, are we actually willing to invest in them game week 1?
They're better than I was expecting. I hadn't really dug into them. Maybe because kind of like you, it's like there's something. It's like they need someone new. It's like the lacking Daka. Yeah, like the Daka sign didn't work out so far. But it was exciting that he was in. There was somebody new.
Yeah, and you need a team like this to have a star. And the question about Vardy, which we can touch upon in a moment, is he still carrying all that burden on his shoulders? But yeah, to start the season, Leicester are home hosting Brentford, a team that has a lot of question marks. So that feels pretty good. Like, I feel very confident starting a defender or somebody like Harvey Barnes in that match.
That match has Jamie Vardy brace written all over it, right? Opening weekend, home to Brentford.
But there are some curious fixtures in the mix here. Away Arsenal in game week 2. Home Southampton. Away Chelsea. Home hosting Manchester United. It's like the home fixtures for Leicester are looking good, and then away is the moment you may want to rotate any gambles that you're making on this Leicester squad.
I like, by the way, we're using the Fantasy Football Scout fixture rating colors here.
Yeah.
And I like that the easy ones are blue, the hard ones are red, and then Man United is just gray. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows what to expect for these guys.
Yeah.
Other good guys, going back to the defense, you've got both James Justin and Wesley Fofana, both at 4.5. Rule of fantasy, try to go for the wingbacks and fullbacks if you can to get more fantasy points. But Fofana, he's no slouch on set pieces, and I think of all of these guys, he's probably most assured of minutes. So he's not a terrible pick.
Your boy James Justin is just hanging there, Brandon. Like an actual your boy, not like one of these fake ones.
Yeah, no, he's not a fake your boy. Like, I do love James Justin. Of course, he was injured for so much of last season that we've lost the narrative with James Justin. I think you don't suddenly stop being a great player. I mean, look at Virgil van Dijk came back from being sidelined by an ACL tear.
It's Virgil van Dijk, though.
It's true. Yeah, we're not going to compare VVD to James Justin, but I feel like where I'm at with a lot of these guys personally is the price is right for all of them. Right. Let's keep an eye on them for when it inevitably doesn't work out with our other 4.5
That's
defenders.
True. That's true. It's nice. I don't even know. Like, I guess I'm going to have a 4.5 one, but again, is that like a slot thing where it just sort of makes sense? Like it's very easy to move to all these kind of cheap 4.5.
I think so. Yeah, but speaking of 4.5, Daniel Amarte, we've got a problem, Houston. He was a great pick last season because through injury he came to play a lot of minutes at 4.0.
Was he even then? It was like you got nothing from him.
Really, and I don't want new managers coming to the FPL site thinking, "Oh, Amarty played a lot of minutes last season. He's relatively cheap at 4.5. I think he's a clear stay away." So now I've got 3 kind of controversial figures here. We've got Iheanacho at forward at 6.5. Last season, 4 goals, 6 assists, which was a huge disappointment after his breakthrough with Leicester the previous season. Yeah. You've got Jamie Vardy, who was another injury last season for Leicester, now coming back with 3 goals and 4 assists, and he's at 9.5. It seems to be like James Justin, when he had his breakout year, you're like, well, is he just going to lose his spot when other players become fit? Always wondering if you should hold on to this guy. Similarly with Jamie Vardy, you're like, when is he going to be too old?
I mean, is that right? He didn't have 3 goals and 4 assists last season, did he? That's what you've written down here? No, he had 15 goals and 3 assists.
Yeah, right. He had that huge spurt at the end of last season to get him there. So 9.5. He's competing for space with Erling Haaland, Harry Kane, Gabriel Jesus, and then you've got promoted strikers in Solanke and Mitrovic. Can you spare a thought for Jamie Vardy?
Oh, I can spare many thoughts. Yeah, I mean, I think he's like an actual. I can see a version of my team that had Jamie Vardy. I mean, is like. I mean, part of the problem is that It's just whether we want to have three up front, right? If you want to have Kane and you want to have Gabriel Jesus, can you find room for a Jamie Vardy who's 9.5? Now, there's probably a way to do that. It probably requires you to downgrade in two different spots, right? You turn an 8 million midfielder into Marcus Rashford, let's say, right? Save 1.5, and then you probably just take a premium defender and turn that into something cheaper as well, and then you can get there. So it's not, you know, it can be done. I mean, I think that Brentford fixture is great. I think in terms of like long-term like structure, I'm not in love with it, and so I think that's the problem.
He's an interesting let's attack game week 1 and wild card early sort of a pick. So I don't want to down talk the Vardy pick because I think there is a viable strategy somewhere in there that is not there with Iheanacho.
He's probably going to score in that Arsenal game too.
The player that like really confuses me is Dewsbury Hall because he seems to have a somewhat like hybrid 8-6 role. He's kind of all over the place. Sometimes he looks more attacking. I wonder if he's deceiving me there. 1 goal, 2 assists, but I think people expect that he might be more. He's another one who would be trying to play himself into an England World Cup squad.
Right.
But
some of that Conor Gallagher fire, gets forward.
Right. So I think overall with Leicester, interesting picks, not terribly convinced with the narrative of the team going into the start of the season. So I'm not going to start with any of these guys. Maybe we've got Danny Warda as my backup goalkeeper.
I know. It feels like we're at the top half of the table here. we started off on kind of a grim note here, with these. I think in both cases we're looking for some new signings, right? Like some like a little more fresh blood, for both them. So and it's hard to say. I mean, obviously we can't hold off on these team previews until after the transfer deadline, but I think a lot of these squads will change a fair amount down the stretch. I think Everton is one. We talked about last week's podcast. They need some new signings for sure. Although Dwight McNeil had a brace today for Everton. So, hey, only 22. I just assumed he was older than that. I could not believe he was only 22 years old.
There's so much ahead for Dwight McNeil. I mean, he's accomplished so much so far in his career. Where else could he go?
But he is one of these guys. He's kind of like Patrick Bamford or something. Dwight, I think McNeil came to the Man United, system. And so he's got a little bit of a pedigree. And then he's just sort of been hanging out in Burnley. I'm not sure anybody really shines in that Burnley attack unless you're like a 6'5" forward, So I think he's got some potential. I've always liked Dwight McNeil.
Yeah. All right. I don't know how we started talking about Dwight McNeil from Leicester. You can't resist talking about your boys.
It's true.
Let's talk about the next team. Position number 8 in our predicted Premier League table is
Newcastle. Okay. 8th. What a turnaround. I mean, this is a team that it looked like they actually, so they got bought by the Saudis last year. They're now owned by like a government, basically, which, given where they were at the start of last season with Mike Ashley, who I think owns like a number of sporting goods stores or something like that in Newcastle, like throughout England. Yeah. Sports Direct.
Yep, that's right. Yeah. You would know it by the giant Sports Direct banners all over St. James Park.
Right. So they had the controversial ownership switch that happened, and they actually, I have to say, they bought very smartly in January. They brought in Bruno Guimaraes. And probably not saying that correctly.
I think you're close enough. Yeah, you're close enough.
And they brought in Matt Target. They brought in
Dan Burn.
And a lot of
Kieran Trippier,
yeah, all smart. Nothing was like insane, right? They weren't like, okay, yeah, we're just gonna spend $100 million and bring in some massive forward who like the club isn't quite ready.
Well, where do you classify Chris Wood in that spectrum?
No, I mean in terms of like dollar amount, right? They didn't buy Neymar in January or something like that.
Right, yeah.
So they turned things around completely. We're basically safe by, I don't even remember, something like April. And this was after they were like dead last in the relegation spot, like in genuine deep trouble.
I loved how the conversation quickly flipped from, this team is in trouble to how quickly can they make the top 4 in the next decade.
Right. And so we have them 8th here, which feels like
they're on their way.
They're on their way. Exactly. They could sneak into a European place. That would not be, a total shocker. They have a great start to the season. They play Forest, Brighton, Wolves. We keep saying Brighton's a bad fixture. Is that a pretty good fixture? I feel like that is not a terrible. That is not actually a good fixture. Like I would not want to go to the Amex and play, especially if I was any kind of non-top 6 club.
Yeah, the Amex is in that zone of, we all talk about it like it's a fortress. We need a fortress index for the Premier League.
We do. Ooh, that's future podcasting right there. Kings of the Game Week, Fortress Index. Yeah, Kit Talk. There's a lot of things we can.
Vegas is bringing out some great ideas in us. All your virtual reality ideas, Josh. And now
I wish we could stop the pod right now and I could just do 30 minutes on where VR should be going.
Yeah, guys, just change the graphic to our VR looking ahead graphic. I think that'd be great.
So, Forest, Brighton, Wolves, Palace, West Ham, Bournemouth, a lot of, if not winnable fixtures where they could certainly score goals, right? And, I think they do play Man City and Liverpool, but, we're talking about 8 fixtures ahead. There's a lot of, very rarely you're going to see like just a clean run of no difficult matches. I think it's about as good a start as any other club has. And so I'm certainly looking at a couple players for the team. I mean, you have Trippier and you have Nick Pope, who signed in the summer. Yeah. And Trippier, it's kind of interesting because he kind of feels like a new signing because he came in, played well, and then kind of immediately got injured. Available for only $5 million, it's a reasonable price. Nick Pope's in the same category, actually. Consistently a top asset. Played for Burnley. Burnley did have a defensive setup that probably helped him a little bit, but ultimately, in some ways, there's only so much you can do when you don't have any attacking talent. Like you're going to constantly be kind of on the back foot.
Right, and one of the benefits for Nick Pope is, as you say, the defensive setup, they were very tight, and they tried to limit the opposition's shot selection to shots that were farther away from the goal frame. So, that's where you're going to get all of these saves or low percentage shots. That's why Pope sort of comes out looking like the great shot stopper that he is.
I do think he's a great shot stopper, though.
No
I
doubt.
like him. Yeah.
No
so
doubt.
do you think Pope or Pickford should be the starting keeper for England, or somebody else?
Yeah. Well, on shot stopping alone, you'd go Pope. But what Southfield apparently likes so much about Jordan Pickford is his distribution. Like that's something that Southgate has worked really hard with Pickford on, and that's how he sort of like starts the England attack. So can Pope at Newcastle, can Eddie Howe turn Nick Pope into a distribution machine?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and Pickford, we're just going to talk about Everton apparently in this podcast. Pickford, only 4.5 million, one of the most affordable players, one of the most affordable keepers you can have. People have asked us, how does the World Cup in November, right? This first ever mid-season World Cup. Mm-hmm. How does that impact your fantasy strategy? And I have been thinking that it really won't, because of the wild cards and when we're going to play them and the fact that you have unlimited transfers when the season comes back. But what I haven't maybe taken into account enough are the players who really want to push for an England spot, and whether that does take them to another level. It doesn't mean I'm going to bring in Pickford necessarily, but we sort of see early on, like if Pickford looks like he's going to be terrific right now and he's that cheap in the game, like my whole strategy this season is I'm going to be kind of as our friend Jonty says, a little bit of a dullard. When it goes into game week 1, keep it very simple, very much like everybody else. Not planning to go 5 at the back, but other than that, I'm going to keep it very, very similar, and then pivot as quickly as possible. Right, move right into adjust. That's sort of my game plan there. But anyway, back to Newcastle. So top players, a lot of interesting attacking players here. You have Callum Wilson, great forward. Callum the Truth Wilson. Yeah. 7.5 million, 8 goals last season. Down from 12 the season before, but he was injured for 20 matches. Yeah. So ultimately, that's 8 goals in 18 matches. That's not bad, right? Double that. That's 16 and 36.
My head's spinning from the math, Josh. Slow down.
And I mean, there's almost not much to be said about Callum Wilson. You kind of know what you're getting. You're going to get roughly 8 to 12 goals every year, and I expect kind of the same this season. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to be actually kicked on a little bit better. I don't see him as a 20-goal forward, but because he's going to be supported by a stronger defense and a stronger midfield, that almost helps him more than up front. I think the real question right now, and sort of as we were preparing for this podcast, is who is going to start on the right wing for Newcastle? Probably going to be a new signing ultimately. At the moment, it looks like there's a couple players who are sort of competing for that spot. You've got Almiron over there, probably battling with Fraser for the right wing spot. Either one.
These are not names that are filling me with great confidence.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. It's not filling with like a ton of confidence either, but they are available there. And you've got St. Maximin, 6.5 back to being classified as a midfielder. So that's kind of a nice change. 5 goals and 7 assists. I think he's probably the most entertaining player in the Premier League. He's the one that I'm sort of the most I just had to sit down and watch somebody's YouTube videos.
Sure,
it's probably him. He'd be right up there.
Just search "step over" on YouTube, and I'm sure he'll come up.
So he did. He had 3 goals and 5 assists the year before. Pushed on, finished with 5 goals and 7 assists last season. So a nice improvement from him. And he's cheap, 6.5. He's in that Marcus Rashford range. Not bad.
Cheap-ish. I think 6.5 should be cheap-ish. Because if I'm looking at lots of drafts right now for myself, 6.5 is the third midfielder spot. Yep. If you're not going super heavy up top, so I'm calling you out there. I'm going to say it's cheap-ish, not cheap.
Yeah, I mean, no one has talked about him. I have not heard anybody recommend St. Max for a spot in your fantasy team. I mean, I don't even know what his ownership is.
Well,
right
yes.
I had to guess. Is it under 5%?
I want to say it's right at 5%. Exactly.
All right, I'm going to go under. I'm going to guess 3.2%.
Okay. I feel like while you're looking that up, FPL. I thought we all thought it was odd how FPL reclassed St. Max last season to a forward because he's not a forward,
right.
And but then it kind of worked because that made St. Max kind of an interesting FPL pick. Now that he's back in the forward slot, right. It's almost like his FPL potential is diminished.
Not that either of us ever had him.
No, yeah, he's one of those great FPL players where. Sure, it's fun to talk about him. It's like as fun to talk about St. Max in fantasy as it is to watch him. To own him is just a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Maybe it's better not to have him in fantasy because then you can just actually enjoy his play.
All right, ownership level?
7.4%.
Okay, I was closest then. Thank you.
Yeah, double what I was expecting. So he is. I suppose he's one to watch. I mean, I talked about Bruno G already.
Yeah.
6 million signed in January. Box to box, played probably a little farther forward last year than he will this season. I mean, I think if all goes well with transfers, with the performance of players up front, he should be doing more of this kind of link up play. Sort of. I mean, everybody needs a great box to box player. I mean, to be a to get a European spot, right? And so that should be what he does. He was terrific at that end of last season, both from a real world perspective, and then he was also really good in fantasy a lot of the time too. He was really valuable for some of their double game weeks down the line. So I think at 6 million, and the fact that they play Forest, Brighton, Wolves, 3 of the first 4, I don't think he's an insane early pick. Okay. You have to know that you're not getting a number 10. Right, and that you're getting somebody who might get goals just because he's so good, and not because it's necessarily he's not going to get easy goals like the way a more advanced player might because they're in the right place at the right time.
It's sort of a given that we're in Vegas right now at the wonderful Blue Wire Studios in Wynn, Las Vegas.
Well done.
Got to do. Are we contracted to do a name check every 30 minutes? He's like a fun double down pick. He's a bit of a gamble if you're looking to have a little bit of fun. And the way you sort of positioned your strategy a moment ago, the way we're looking at game week 1 is we're shying away from the gambles, but then come game week 2, that's when it's on. That's when we're going to throw all the chips down.
Exactly. Yeah. Insane. I like to have it going into game week 1. I would like to have one player that that nobody has. It's just more fun for me to have at least one player that I can kind of that weekend he gets to be my little guy, they get to root for.
Yeah.
So we'll see who that is. Maybe it's Brendan, your boy, Joe Linton. It's hard to say.
I'm happy to have Joe Linton in my your boy family. I do like it. He seems like a fun dude.
Classified as a 6 million mid.
Yeah.
So he's used to be a forward, but he actually it's an appropriate classification because they sort of reinvented him. Eddie Howe, who I've always liked. I like a lot of managers.
Very likable guy,
including Eddie Howe. So kind of reinvented himself. Maybe he is good now. I don't really know. It's confusing to me still. I have in my head that he's bad. And so
bad as a fantasy pick or bad IRL?
Bad IRL.
Okay.
Bad LOL. I feel like that's.
I would push back. I do think he has been genuinely good for Newcastle in that reinvented sort of sixth role, I guess he's playing.
That's what I mean, the new version. So 4 goals and 2 assists last year, but it kind of wasn't until Howe came in that they figured out what to do with him. So I think that he's one to watch. I suppose I like him a little less than Bruno, even though he's more advanced, just because I just think Bruno's really good, you know, and it's sort of, but I don't know. I mean, the problem with Bruno is it's kind of like having like Jordan Henderson in your fantasy team. Like Jordan Henderson's a great player. Jordan Henderson is going to get some assists, balls to Mo Salah. He's going to score some goals shots at the box. Is that the best use of your money, having Jordan Henderson?
No, I think we'll just, we're not going to waste time. We'll waste time doing other things on the show, I'm sure, but not with the Jordan Henderson argument.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the defenders then.
Yeah.
All right. We talked about Trippier already. I think a great contender because he's basically going to own that right wing. The right back spot, and he scores free kicks. I think he was taking corners at least before he got injured.
Yeah. Would you think it's fair to say to call Trippier a Trent who is 2.5 million cheaper?
No, I wouldn't say that.
I'm not saying he's a replacement for Trent, but he's offering that level of upside.
I don't think so.
No.
I mean, because I feel like the Trippier stuff has gotten like a little out of hand. I mean, I remember.
Tell me why.
Well, I remember him when he was at Spurs, and he wasn't Trent. Like he was okay. Like he was pretty good. You know, like had some attacking returns.
So your favorite Trippier moments were his Burnley moments, right?
Did he play for? Yeah, he did play for Burnley for a while.
Right.
Yeah, he was okay for them too. And so this idea, it's almost like because he got injured the second half of last season, he keeps getting elevated. But he is only $5 million, so he's worth considering. The player that I'm now considering, though, Brandon, is my boy Sven Botman.
Sure.
I'll say that again. My boy Sven Botman.
Yeah, roll that back.
22-year-old, 4.5 million center back from Lille. 3 goals, 1 assist, and 25 appearances. He's a big man, Brandon, a big lad. I think he's like 6'4", right? Giant center back. Has been playing in all of their preseason matches too. So it looks like he's going to slot right in. 4.5 million player for Newcastle, slots right in. Saves you a little money, like if Trippier is like a little too expensive. Maybe that allows you to have Ederson as your keeper, right? There's some possibilities there.
I see the ripple effect.
Exactly. There's ripples. Grateful Dead, Grateful Dead song just turned into a great way to manage your fantasy team, Brandon. So but I think that he's really, one to watch, and the fact that I think he's basically going to lock in that spot kind of right away. In fact, to the point where he might actually be a replacement for Dan Burn, who was terrific, but Burn just a little slow. I think that's part of the problem.
Is he feeling the
burn? Exactly.
Yeah, I think I like the way this conversation is going with Newcastle, where we started with 2 teams where we're like, yeah, sure, but no thanks. And now you get to Newcastle where you see
decisions.
It's a justifiably complicated decision tree with Newcastle, which I think means they're going to be a really fun team to grapple with in the fantasy season.
One final note on Newcastle: Matt Targett was made official. Probably my 4th favorite defender on this Newcastle team. So he makes my top 4.
That's good.
Bad.
Yeah.
But he's Cresswell at $5 million. If he was 4.5, I'd be more excited. But he, he's got a little bit of assist threat. I wish like he and Jack Grealish could get back together. I love that duo.
Sure.
When they're at Villa together.
Yeah, they're overlapping runs. It was so weird to have that being one of the more Hollywood duos. Like, I guess Grealish is so Hollywood that he needs to be paired with one of the more sort of deadpan players in the league. So go on, Matt Targett. All right. So does that round out our Newcastle evaluation?
One final shout out, Joe Willock.
There's always one more.
5 million midfielder, 2 goals and 3 assists last year after an amazing 8-goal half-season performance when he was on loan from Arsenal. It was terrific. Probably helped Newcastle stay up. And like the ripple effect from there. Like, does Newcastle still get bought by the Saudi government if they don't, stay up?
A true sliding Willock moment.
It is
for
a
Newcastle.
sliding Willock moment. I want that as a like a graphic or something like the sliding Willock. We're gonna have to talk to our friend.
Just take the movie poster for Sliding Doors. Replace Gwyneth Paltrow with Joseph Willock.
But it looks like he's probably a pretty good chance he's going to start. He has some competition from Matty Longstaff. So, but that tells you he should be able to push on from there. I mean, Longstaff should not be. Well, I don't know. I don't know any Longstaff slander here. So let's move on from Newcastle to the number 7 team. Who is that, Brandon?
Number 7 is West Ham, and I think it's difficult to put West Ham at 7 because they pushed on so well last season and mounted a really strong campaign, both in the Premier League and in the Europa League. And David Moyes has fully made this team his own. And there is just like a bounty of fun attacking talent now on West Ham.
A bounty.
Yeah. And the trick with them is they have the worst conceivable start. I guess there is one worst possible start in that they would be away at the Etihad. At least they host Manchester City in game week 1.
Yeah, worst game week 1. I think that the actual start isn't so bad.
Yeah, right. If you move beyond the City fixture in game week 1, you're looking at Forest, Brighton, the fortress that is Brighton, even though they host them, Aston Villa, Spurs, Chelsea, Newcastle, Everton, Wolves, Fulham. So I think West Ham it's fair enough to start with a player. I think that they then become FPL assets of patience because it will kind of be a little bit of a roller coaster with their output, given how all these great fixtures are sprinkled in with some really tough ones. I mean, I think City and Spurs are looking like the big offensive juggernauts going into the start of the season, and we'll obviously talk more about
I love all
them.
these teams that they played in preseason.
I know. Look at
Servette, Ipswich, Boreham Wood.
Yeah.
Luton Town,
Reading, of course, Rangers. A lot of people are. Club America and Glasgow Rangers are getting a lot of preseason love with the Premier League teams and European teams. Well, how have these results gone? Well, they've gone generally well. West Ham aren't losing any of these preseason matches, but nobody's really caught on fire. They're not. They haven't scored more than 2 goals in any of these matches. You've got Zuma with a goal and an assist, who's kind of leading the attacking charge from
nobody's boy.
Central defense. Ben Rama has put one past Boreham Wood. Bowen got an assist to Vlasic against Reading. And then Thomas Souček is 2 goals in 2 matches for the preseason.
Back to 5.5 after the big jump last year.
Yeah, and Souček is always an interesting one for your fantasy radar because he has on our flight out to Vegas, Josh, I saw somebody in front of me watching Moneyball. And of course, whenever we talk about Moneyball, we always talk about that scene with the old school backroom staff talking about he's got a great body, real baseball body.
Yep.
And Souček has, I think, what we call a great fantasy body. He's just very tall, which means he's going to get on a lot of set pieces, and he just scores a lot of goals. He is exceptional at crashing the box.
You know who I saw score a good goal in preseason just today? I was watching highlights. Dominic Calvert-Lewin. It all comes back to Everton. The recurring theme.
Please stop. Please stop with this.
I can't help it.
He's all right. DCL's got a good fantasy body too. I'll give him that. All right. So those are some names that you already know of. Who are the new signings at West Ham since summer? Naif Agard. He's a 26-year-old Moroccan center back, possibly pairing with Zuma to start. He had 5 goals in 66 appearances for Rennes in Ligue 1. Flynn Downs coming in from Swansea, probably backup for somebody like Declan Rice.
Great name, though.
Flynn Downs, very much. Definitely sounds like a pilot from a war in years past.
Like the Red Baron's arch nemesis or something. Yeah.
Some notable transfers out. Ryan Fredericks, fullback, he's gone. Mark Noble, of course, retired. Andrei Yarmolenko, always a woulda, coulda, shoulda. Wish he had a better career at West Ham. Like very enigmatic player when he was on point. He's now off, as is David Martin. Good guys. Who do we remember from last year? So let's talk about Jared Bowen. Did you have Jared Bowen for any great moments last season? Because he was one of the
for sure. Yeah, I mean, I got to him a little late.
Yeah.
I liked him early on, and then it was West Ham were an interesting team last year, right? They got incredibly hot out of the gate.
Yeah.
I think they really suffered having only one forward, Antonio, and when his form. The team rises and falls with him in a lot of ways, and I felt like when his form dipped, it took a minute, and then Bowen sort of took over the attacking.
So that's where I think we want to go with the Bowen discussion going into the start of the season, because how much longer can Antonio's body, as sort of like as incredible a player and as fit as Antonio appears, he seems to be prone to just losing his legs, losing his fitness. And I think if
Forrest Gump style.
If you look at Bowen's incredible output, sure, I see your Forrest Gump reference. I will acknowledge that. If you look at Bowen's output last season, 12 goals, 17 assists, it's kind of as astronomical. It's like Mahrez, Leicester levels of output. Can he keep it up? And on top of that, he's got the supercharged price of 8.5. But yeah, I think going back to that Antonio point, West Ham are going to continue to rely upon Jared Bowen. And listen, eye test alone, the way Bowen was scoring his goals, getting his attacking returns, these were not flukes. This guy is a great player. He's way beyond any of these players that you've already mentioned gunning for an England position for the World Cup.
Oh, he's in.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think
I wish his name was Flynn Downs.
Yeah,
he looks like a Flynn Downs, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. He's got the Flynn Downs look. I think for sure. Is there room for 2 Downs in the locker room at the London Stadium? We'll soon find out. So I'm pro Bowen. It's always easier said than done because the 8.5 price tag it really stings. I think we have to, unfortunately. I don't know. What do you think?
What about this? If this is like a classic thing. Happens every season, right? There's some team that has like the hardest match of game week 1, and you just sort of avoid them because you want to put your best foot forward that first week, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about if you just brought in an 8 million midfielder, whoever you want, right? Let's say it's Luis Diaz, right? And then you kept 0.5 million in the bank. Then the plan transfer never works, but in theory, you could do this, and then you could move to Bowen and you'd have him for the Forest Brighton Villa match, and then evaluate from there.
Yeah,
crazy idea.
I don't think it's crazy, and I think the other more positive fantasy way to look at it is, so what if it's a bad fixture in game week 1? We believe in Bowen. He's a great player. Just bring him in because you're not going to bring a player in just for one fixture. This is a great FPL pitfall of I'm going to do the 1 week transfer because I think that these points are coming, and often they don't. So I think if you're planning to have Bowen long term, maybe you think you can get off on the right foot and hold that wild card for 10 weeks and you want to have Bowen, I say just start with him in game week 1. Am I going to be able to
find... Will you be doing that?
I mean, I honestly, I'm waffling on this because I'd like to, but I just don't see how it makes sense because, Josh, we said before the podcast, we need to drive this home. Trademark year of the forward. Always cheating has brought this to you. There are so many expensive dudes that we feel like are more in the need category than want. And I think maybe that's where we land. Bowen feels it more in the want category than the need category at this moment. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. I mean, the want need category. That's another podcast right there, Brandon. Who do you want? Who do you need?
Yeah. It's what are the stickers from the Italian company that you get for like the Euros and the World Cup?
Oh, the paninis.
The panini. Yeah, it's like got need. I think Bowen is more of a want, need. Okay, we got lots of other players on West Ham to talk about here, though I do think Bowen is probably the most interesting. You've got a couple of other midfielders that I just want to call out because I kind of like them, and I think they are decently priced. Benrahma at $6 million. He was hot at the start of last season, ended on 8 goals and 6 assists. Question mark with him is did he play himself out of the squad and lose his form? I think he is a talented player, but
I mean that's literally what he did last year.
Yeah, right. Which is I think there is a place for him in any West Ham squad. It's just a matter of he's able to reach out there and grab it. And then I think maybe even more interesting, a guy who sort of held on to his place in a more compelling way was Pablo Fernandez, and he's 0.5 cheaper than Benrahma. He finished on 6 goals and 4 assists. He's a dynamic player. He plays a little to the left of the striker. He's good at getting forward. So Benrahma and Fornals, I think Fornals more so are players we'll keep an eye on. Yeah. Decently priced in the defense is Aaron Cresswell. Now, I feel like he is exactly the same as Kieran Trippier.
I think Cresswell is like the Will Zaha of defenders.
Okay, yeah,
You kind of know exactly what you're going to get every single season.
Yeah.
Like incredible metronomic consistency.
Yeah. I have got a bad guy category here, and this is just more a personal bias because I'm a cat lover. We'll never forget Kurt Zuma and what you've done.
Not your boy.
Yeah, he's not my boy. You know what you did, Kurt. But he's doing bits in the preseason. He'll probably be one of the starting center backs, and he has.
Would you own him? Like if he's like you need a 4.5 player. They've got great fixtures, or is it a principal thing? You would never have.
I'll state here. One thing we didn't mention is the Blue Wire Studios here at the Wynn Las Vegas. It's kind of a fishbowl. We're seeing lots of people walk by here in the Wynn. They're waving at us, and I'm going to say to them, as they're looking at me, I will never have Kurt Zuma in my fantasy team. I have pledged that right now.
Wow.
On the Always Cheating
I would
podcast.
never do that. I would. I'm completely immoral when it comes to amoral. I should say, not immoral.
But I think the interest with West Ham right now is in the attack. I think that's where the value is going to be, less so in the clean sheets, because there could be a keeper drama, boiling up here. Fabianski. He's in that Jamie Vardy category of like how much longer can he hold on to this sort of elite Premier League goalkeeper status? He leads the top flight at like I think it's current playing goalkeepers with most pen saves. This often goes unspoken about.
Yeah.
But you've got Areola waiting in the wings, who like his deal from PSG was made permanent this summer, and I think there is every possibility that he makes, he grabs that number one from Fabianski, not to start, but at some point. Does that, put the whole defense off kilter? I don't know. And just last on West Ham, can we talk about Mikel Antonio? We've kind of talked about his fitness issues. Is he a trap for fantasy managers right now? Would you even come close to considering Antonio now?
Sure. I mean, he's a great player. He's not that expensive, really, at 7.5 million. It's probably, honestly, we probably should be talking about him more. I mean, I guess it's just that Man City match in game week 1, but I mean, of all of the sub 8 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
If Gabriel Jesus is the kind of least expensive premium that everyone's going to like in that kind of mid tier, the middle class of forwards, he's probably still the best, right? I mean, 10 goals, 10 assists last season.
Yeah,
is when he's in form and not like exhausted, he's terrific.
Yeah, right. I think I would still rather have Bowen over him if I'm limiting my West Ham attacking slots to 1. Okay, we've got about an hour to go, Josh, and we've got 6 big meatballs to swallow here.
All right.
6 big teams. And the next one, I know when we were doing a lot of prep for this episode on the plane coming out here, you said, man, I actually spent way more time than I thought I would on this team.
You have to, because the drama follows Man United around. Man United's our 6th team. They're in our Europa Conference League spot for next year. I think this is I feel like even Man United supporters would think this is probably about where you'd expect them to be right now. Drama even today, right? We're recording this on Friday, July 29th. Ronaldo has come out and said that like the king is back or something like that.
He's like gone full Jordan Belfort. Like, I'm not leaving.
Exactly. So I don't know what's going on anymore. Could just be a negotiating tactic. Like I don't. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Who negotiates like this? I mean, maybe they're doing this at some used car dealership, in the middle of
24
Nebraska.
hours before, he's like, let me do the right thing and let me out of my contract, And so it's just like, it's a total mess. And I kind of imagine if I were, listen, if you want Man United commentary, you can get it like everywhere on the internet. But I imagine if I were Ten Hag, I would just want to start over. I would just want to start fresh with my guys.
Yeah, you're moving into a new house and you want all signs of like the ex-girlfriend gone.
I mean, Ronaldo's a great player, of course. Had 18 goals and 3 assists last year, right? 10.5 million, not an insane price. Yeah. If he plays, we're going to have to kind of reckon with him, But the whole offense has to be built around him. He doesn't press, right? So anything you want to do with your squad, you kind of can't do if Ronaldo's in your squad. Now, I don't even really like talking about Man United anymore because it is the fan base is so keyed up.
It's like now. Star Wars, right? Like we went to see Rise of Skywalker, and you were like, "I hated that," and you turned to me and you're like, "What did you think, Brandon?" And I was like, "Oh well," and you're like, "Did you like it?" And my response was, I'm tired of talking about Star Wars.
Yeah, and yet we talk about it all the time still. So I don't know what Although now I just talk about how much I hate like everything that's come out. Since
I know.
then.
I think that's it. I think United has gone full Star Wars at this point.
But talking about a Man United player is the quickest way to get the entire internet mad at you. So I will say this now. I also say, listen, if you're a Man United supporter, you know the club very well. Just hit that little 30-second skip button, Brandon.
We're going to take more than 30 seconds here, I'm afraid.
Exactly. So last year was a pretty rough season. When you cycled through a couple managers, the OGS era ended. Rangnick came in, and honestly, that was kind of a disaster too. By the end of last season, they were like the most irrelevant team in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Like, they weren't really playing for. I guess they maybe had like an outside chance of a European, Did they have a Champions League spot late? It felt like they had already fallen so much that they couldn't do it. But regardless, not a great season. They bring in Ten Hag, who is widely admired, was terrific at Ajax. Prefers to utilize a 4-2-3-1. So that's an important thing to know about him, because when you're looking at your fantasy players, especially up front, it kind of helps you to think about those slots, right? And so right now, looks like, let's assume that Ronaldo ultimately does leave, which I think is still probably going to happen.
Right.
You have Anthony Martial, classic want-away forward, who is now back and had a good preseason.
Mr. Good Vibes himself.
Player I would never. You talking about like Kurt Zuma? I mean, it would take a lot for me to have Anthony Martial in fantasy.
Wasn't it like 2 seasons ago though, where you had Martial for a stretch and he did really well for you?
I know, but I'm just sick.
You're done.
I don't trust him.
Okay.
I just don't trust him, because he can be in form, and then somebody doesn't play a pass that he wants, and he's done for like 6 weeks, right? Just like he's just like in a bad mood, And he's one of those people. I'm like this too, so I do empathize. But when he is upset, everybody knows it. You can see it on the pitch. When he's not happy, he just scowls.
What's that George Michael gif from Arrested Development where he comes in and drops his backpack down on the floor and just kind of like falls over?
Yeah, exactly.
That's Martial.
A little bit like that. That's Martial. And so he's just, I don't trust him. So you have Martial up front, and then it looks like you're going to have Marcus Rashford on the left, Bruno Fernandez in the hole, and then Jaden Sancho on the right. So Jaden Sancho, cheap, $7 million. Marcus Rashford, cheap, $6.5 million. These are players who you could very easily fit into your fantasy squad, who could do. I mean, they've both been very strong in the preseason. Rashford in particular. So, I mean, Rashford is just like he's just fascinating, right? Because he's down to 6.5. He had 4 goals and 2 assists last year. He is a great player. He's super young still. This is a guy who is like, I said this before, I think, in this podcast. I mean, he scored a crucial goal at PSG in the Champions League. Like, this guy is a great experience. He had 11 the season before last. He had 17 goals and 8 assists the season before that, 10 goals and 7 assists the season before that. So he can score, he can pass.
Earnest, real talk with Rashford is there's just no way to know how much the disaster at the Euros and all of the garbage talk around his off-the-field good work that he was doing.
He's stretched too thin.
And how much does that impact a player with the season? But I agree with you. That doesn't just brush away all of the great football that he has played in the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, and like clearly you can do that stuff and still. I mean, think about like how much. This is criticisms followed, especially English players forever. Like David Beckham had this too. It didn't matter how well he played; he just did too many commercials and drove people crazy. So I think Rashford's that guy right now. Dominic Calvert-Lewin gets some of this too. And so, but I think you can make a case, even just aside from like the offseason stuff. They've just been overworked and overextended, right? Just played a ton of matches for England, and just like kind of, they played really well in the restart, the COVID restart summer 2020. Played a lot of minutes then, played well for them then too. And so, I think maybe he just needed some time off. He's even said as much. He looks ripped too. Like he's like got himself in incredible shape going into the season. So
very sinewy.
I think there is a version of my Game Week 1 team that does have Marcus Rashford in it. It's not impossible for me.
Yeah, I'm with it too. I think that hype train has gained steam for justifiable reasons.
Yeah, exactly. You just have to look past last year, and at 6.5 million, it's like, so if he doesn't work out, it's fine. There's it's very easy to move him to somebody else.
Yeah.
So I think
All right, you sold me on Rashford.
Jaden Sancho, I'm not as sure about.
Okay.
He's a little more expensive, $1 million more expensive.
He's the guy who got you in the most hot water last season on Twitter.
Truly. Yeah, people did not take kindly to me suggesting that he stunk last season. And apparently it was like he was always the pass to the other player. I don't know. I'm not a big enough fan of Man United to know what he did that was so good. But I believe them. Fair enough.
People I think people would say he's got great movement, great speed, and he was a victim of a team that had not gelled, and so he suffered.
There's some sick part of my personality that because I know that it makes people angry when I talk.
You
about
just
how
want to double down.
I can't help it. Everyone. All of my friends know this about me. I like to stick my finger in everybody's wounds.
But do you feel like Sancho is the type of player like if he suddenly gets hot, you really have to consider that?
Sure. I mean, I was excited about him going into last year.
Mm-hmm.
He had like a insane one of his years at BVB. He was like. It was like 19 goals and 19 assists or something like that. Like he was incredible, you know. And so like it's so maybe we've talked about the Bundesliga tax, right? Mm-hmm. Erling Haaland, but the thing is like that doesn't last forever. I mean, KDB, like a lot of Son, these are players who came from the Bundesliga who are incredible, obviously, and so it's maybe just takes a little time to adjust, right? So I am by no means out on Sancho. I just think that we didn't see a great version of him last year. And because I don't quite know what we're getting with him yet, going $1 million cheaper for the player who's going to play on the opposite wing, who we know has a great track record as well, right. In the Premier League, seems like the way to go. But we'll see. I'm not convinced I'm going to have either one. That leaves Bruno Fernandez. Talked a minute earlier about him. Comes in at $10 million, 10 goals and 7 assists last year, which honestly was a huge dip for me. We had 18 goals and 14 the year before that. Yeah. Ronaldo ruined Bruno. Just from a fantasy perspective, I don't know. Maybe from another perspective, I mean, they weren't good in any way last year. So you could argue that it didn't bring out the best in Bruno. Bruno needs to be the alpha. That's just his personality, apparently. And if he can't, then he kind of sulked and got a bunch of yellow cards.
This is not something that's foreign to any sport, any team. Right. There's usually only room for one alpha dog, and I don't think Bruno resented Ronaldo. They're obviously national team teammates. It just didn't. Whatever his style of play was, it didn't work.
It's an on the pitch thing. Exactly. Exactly. It doesn't. Who knows what they're how well they get along.
I'm sure they celebrate Thanksgiving together every year.
I think so. Wow. With all the Wolverhampton players, they all get together and
they go to that local coffee shop
that Neves and
was it Neves and Moutinho? Jota, of course. Yeah, the Portuguese connection again.
I want to hang out with those guys someday, Brandon.
Yeah.
So new signings, you've got Lisandro Martinez, $50 million center back signing, quite short, which everyone has been very quick to say is irrelevant. But let's see. I don't know.
I mean, his vertical leap is the best in the league. I don't know how do you.
It's like a Muggsy Bogues Spud Webb level.
What kind of shit? What kind of air pockets does he have in his shoes? Is what I want to know.
Everyone was like, "Hey, Carlos Puyo is short," and it didn't matter. And it's like, all right, you've compared to the best defender from the legendary Barcelona team.
Yeah. There's a way to say the modern way you play the game is the ball is on the floor much more, and if Martinez's position is better and he knows when to tackle, when to step in and cut out the passes, cool.
Yeah. I mean, who needs a Ruben Diaz or Virgil van Dijk level of giant commanding center back?
Plenty of teams have won the league without Virgil van Dijk. Okay?
That's true. Or Ruben Diaz or Aymeric Laporte.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, it's kind of fun. I'm excited about it. Let's see if they can make it work. And he's just $4.5 million. Instantly started this week. Basically, the day he signed, he was in one of those behind closed doors friendlies that everybody knew everything that happened in it. So I'm like why didn't I just show it? Started this week in a partnership with Varane. It sounds like it's probably not gonna Varane might actually be the third guy here, and that because he's left sided. And so you could play him with Maguire. Get it? You could have a more natural left foot, right foot pairing at center back. So we'll see. I mean, this was the problem with Varane and Maguire last year to a degree, is that they're both. I think it's right footed. I think I have that right. I
don't look at me.
Yeah, I know it, and now I'm getting I have podcast
That's
brain,
fine.
But I'm pretty sure. So we'll see. I mean, $4.5 million, that's a really reasonable price for someone who should almost certainly start right away from Man United.
And somebody who's playing in front of David De Gea, who's good for a couple of clean sheets on his own. So I think it's fair to consider a very cheap Manchester United defensive asset. Dallo has gotten a fair amount of love preseason, but that's not for me.
It's just a little too nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Right? Too much competition on those wing-back spots right now. I mean, you have this guy, Terrell Malacia. Malacia, I'm not sure.
Just go with it.
Yeah, part of the Tyrells, Brandon. You know,
Okay.
House Tyrell.
Oh, I do not want to grapple with them. They're bastards.
4.5 million. He's a left back. There's a lot of talk that he'll be a likely starter eventually over Luke Shaw. You know, I think he's a total wait and see fantasy wise. Yeah. 1 goal and 5 assists in 50 matches for Feyenoord. If you're only getting 1 goal in 50 matches in the Dutch league, Brandon, feels like you're not a great even someone like you and me could get 8 goals in the Dutch league. You know,
so I think so.
Yeah, so 1 goal for him, maybe not the greatest goal threat. 5 assists, okay, not bad.
Yeah.
But you know, I think both of the left back and right back spots are wait and sees. We haven't talked about Eriksen yet. Christian Eriksen comes in, played very well when he joined Brentford.
I think this is Juan Mata 2.0. Remember when Manchester United brought in Juan Mata?
That's not nice. That's not nice.
I mean, Eriksen is obviously, how could you not love him as a player and how he's come back from his heart condition. And I would love to see more, and I'm sure we're going to see great from him in the World Cup. But it just seems like it doesn't feel good to me. I'll be honest, deep in my guts.
Deep in your guts?
Deep in my guts. Wow. It feels very Juan Mata-y.
It just seems gross when you have the S, you know? Deep in your gut, okay, sure,
gut,
but deep in your gut.
If I say deep in my gut, then I feel like I'm calling attention to like how much beer I've drunk over the last 15 years of my life.
All right, well, one final thing on Man United is that they actually have a pretty decent. There's that team again. Somehow Brighton is playing everybody in the first week or two of the season.
Yeah, they're crazy.
Every time I've done a fixture on a Brighton, like is looming there.
Graham Potter's like, sorry guys, I'm fully booked.
Yeah, exactly. He's a very busy man. They play Brighton at home in game week 1. I think that's Brighton and then Brentford in game week 2. Liverpool at home, which tough match, but it is at home. Southampton away in game week 4. So I think from an attacking perspective, I like these opening 4 fixtures. I would stay away from the defense entirely at the moment. I mean, because of the way things are working out, there's really no reason to hold your wild card, certainly any later than game week 8. But I think even 5, 6, 7. Let's see. I think wait and see on the defense. But I think there's a real case for playing one of these, for having a Sancho, a Rashford, or maybe an Eriksen. I mean, just because he's so good, did score a free kick in a friendly this week.
Yeah.
Which he kind of stopped doing his at the end of his Spurs time. But then I think he did score a couple for Brentford. So I don't know. He's back on free kicks again.
I just overall think Rashford is a gift from fantasy at his bargain price tag, and he's a bit of a hack to this. A hack in a computer video game sort of a way to this Manchester. He's not bad at telling jokes. I don't know about that, but I think that's kind of for me a little bit of the beginning and the end of the FPL discussion for Old Trafford.
All right. Well, I think we keep it pretty cool on Man United. So let's move on to the next club. Chelsea.
All right. So we talked about this morning and felt renewed in our confidence that Chelsea really had to be bumped out of the top 4 conversation this season. And we put them at number 5. I mean, there's been a lot of turmoil and turnover with the ownership changes. And the thing with Chelsea that I felt was they don't have an attacking star. They brought in Romelu Lukaku to hopefully be an outsized presence as a number 9. That failed miserably. None of the, Havertz and Timo, the German contingent, haven't caught fire.
Pulisic, sadly.
Pulisic hasn't worked. There are just no stars in Chelsea to take them to as Creed said, take them higher.
Well, N'Golo Kante scored in a friendly today, so maybe he's the one.
Yeah, Kante, the ultimate FPL catnip there. And maybe they're seeking to rectify that by bringing Raheem Sterling in, where
also scored today.
You could be more confident with Sterling. With his Premier League experience and putting your faith in him versus the new guys from Germany who haven't really put up the same numbers. Chelsea have a curious start. They've got some pretty good fixtures. They're Everton. They're going to go try to stick it to their old buddy Frank Lampard there in game week 1, followed by Spurs home, Leeds, Leicester, Southampton, West Ham, Fulham. This is a good run. I think for most FPL managers, what's most enticing is what we saw from their fullbacks last season, or their wingbacks, with Tuchel playing atop back 5. So it's all about Reece James or Ben Chilwell. Now,
I would throw Mason Mount in there.
Yeah.
Yes. I think he deserves a shout.
Yes, I think he does too. Now, Chelsea have been struggling to score goals apart from the preseason fixture they played today. Mount has scored an assist in the preseason, and I think he is the most consistent player for Chelsea over the last 2 years. I mean, you often talk about that beautiful assist he played to Havertz to win them the Champions League. How is he not
I was
a
telling
star?
some people out here in the lobby about that.
Yeah, can we roll down the window here and have a little chat? So yeah, I agree with you. I think Mount is competitively priced at 8.0, and you love the symmetry of his numbers last season: 11 goals and 11 assists,
Right.
and those are big numbers for that kind of price tag.
They're great. Like, I mean, I as you're talking, I'm like, why aren't we all talking about Mount as like, given the incredible run of fixtures, given how solid he was? I mean, in what world does Mount not do something in game week 1 away to Everton? Like, it's certain, right?
Yeah. Well, as certain, it's not as certain as I am that I'll never have Kurt Zuma in my team, but I think it's good. I think
Likely, certainly.
Yeah, I think for these reasons that you're mentioning, you have to maybe give Mount the edge over Jared Bowen. But is that argument diminished by the loss of steam in the Chelsea sort of project with this very quiet preseason? The new signings are, I wouldn't say they're odd, but Sterling is another enigmatic character. I'll compare him to Yarmolenko, won't I? But like, you go back and you look at Sterling's stats under Pep at Barcelona.
Yeah.
Combined goals and assists, the biggest number apart from any other Man City player under Pep. Like, his numbers were actually incredible for City, but he never had those moments that stuck out in Premier League fans' minds of like defining him as a star man at Manchester City. But it is because he's surrounded by so many other amazing players there. So is Sterling coming into Chelsea his time to become that star? And you've got two Englishmen trying to drum up some chemistry or have existing chemistry through the English team ahead of the World Cup. Mount, Sterling, there is a world in which this becomes a very interesting FPL pairing.
Yep.
But then going back to defense, that was really all we could rely upon last season. You had Reece James and Ben Chilwell. Now, Ben Chilwell, I feel like he kind of outshined Reece James before his season-ending injury. You look back and, he had just 3 goals and 1 assist before that injury to his knee. And then Reece James came back and did what he did. Like, he got upwards of 20 points in some game weeks.
Right.
I don't know. Where are you on the Chilwell versus Reece James argument?
Well, I mean, I just like James more. I like his style. Like, I think he's got like I think I like his goal threat a little bit more.
This is like when I went into the bank and I asked them what credit card they recommended, and they said, "This one looks cool, doesn't it?" I want to know about what the cashback opportunities are with.
I know that Chilwell got injured, but still, 5 goals and 9 assists from Reece James is a hard thing to just wave away as, Chilwell would have done the same thing if he were healthy all season.
The unanswered question here is there are rumors that Tuchel is going to prefer to go back to his Dortmund setup with 4 at the back, and how is that going to eat into the fantasy returns when the wing backs become fullbacks? Yeah. How is that going to impact Mendy's opportunity for clean sheets? Maybe it means they have to tighten up a little more centrally in the defense, and they're limiting more shots from the opposition. I don't really know what to say about Edward Mendy as a pick other than it seems fine. He's quite decently priced at 5.0. But if you look at their center backs now, they brought in a Koulibaly from Napoli. He's 31 years old. And if you start Koulibaly with Thiago Silva, the average combined age of their starting center backs is 34 years old.
I mean, the whole thing with Rudiger doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah. Like, why didn't I just I don't know, move heaven and earth to keep this guy?
Rudiger gone. Andreas Christensen also gone. So that's another center back option gone. So I'll just quickly shout out Azpilicueta at 5 million. He's a like a Swiss Army man, where they could slot him in if any of their other existing CBs get injured. Decently priced at 5 million. Yeah. And then Pulisic, I think we put him in the category along with Hakim Ziyech, also at 6.0. Really impressively priced. Are they going to be at Chelsea come the end of August? Who knows?
Yeah.
Are they going to catch fire? Who knows? Just not really consistent enough. I think I'm using my $6 million budget for guys who are more dialed in, locked in starters, and we'll just wait to see if they catch fire. And, the ultimate trap player here for new fantasy players is Georgina. Do not be deceived by his output of last season with 6 goals and 2 assists, all pens. And, I feel like the era of the Jorginho hop, skip, jump pen may be coming to a close.
If you go down to 5.5 million, you get so much more.
Yeah,
you can get like a number 10 on a talented bottom half club.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Havertz is. Every guy in this squad has potential, right? You look at Havertz, 8 million forward. Well, maybe 8 goals and 4 assists last season. Ziyech, Timo Werner, Christian Pulisic. These are all players who could break out and have a 15 goal, 7 assist season. It would not be shocking with any of them, but who? It's like
right.
they've all had multiple years to do it, and they still haven't really done it.
So if you're trying to be confident going into game week 1, Mason Mount and Reece James feel like the pick. And as you say, Josh, there's lots of potential with all of these other guys, and you have to take heart in the fixtures to start. Yes. All right, so that's Chelsea boxed. Let's move into the top 4.
Let's do it.
These are the big dogs. I think both IRL life and in fantasy, like they will be great teams. And the logic of start with as many top 4 fantasy assets as possible.
Good rule of thumb.
So who do we have at number 4?
Arsenal. We did it. We moved them into the Champions League.
How can you not be blown away by the summer transfer window?
Probably the best summer of any Premier League team. Yeah. Now, granted, winning the summer does not always equal returns, right? We know this. This is true in every sport. Mm-hmm. In every sport, they do these the winners and losers of the summer, right? Everybody gets graded or whatever, and it often has very little bearing on what we actually. The Tigers had a great offseason by many accounts. They're like the worst team in baseball. So who knows, right? What's going to happen here? But another club I support, Arsenal. We've got them in 4th. I think that there's a lot to like about this club. Now, it is interesting. Like, why did Man City? Why were they willing to part with Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko?
What do they know that we don't know?
Sort of. It's just like I'm kind of surprised they were both gettable, But with that said, Jesus has been terrific. He's had a great offseason. Looks really good in the preseason matches. He's only 8 million. It's kind of like, even if you had questions about him, he's so affordable. It's kind of hard not to just go for him, Mm-hmm. And so it's
irresistible.
It is irresistible. I mean, there's a reason he's like 90% owned in fantasy because he's cheap. He plays for a top club. He's gonna be leading the line, and there's just a lot. And they have good.
And he's had time to bed into the squad, and he's been on fire in the preseason. It's sort of like there is nothing that doesn't feel right about it.
Yeah, you can check all the boxes. I mean, there's kind of a lot of players who fall into this category. I mean, the only problem is, do you want to load up with this many Arsenal attacking players, right? Because you have Saka, only 8 million, again, right in that Mason Mount range, 11 goals, 9 assists last year. Mm-hmm. And that was like a real improvement on the year before as well. So there's a feeling he could kind of continue to push on, right? You could see, if he finished with 14 goals and 10 assists or something like that. That was like the return that Juan Mata had a couple of. Juan Mata.
There he is again.
But when he's at Chelsea, remember,
he had a bad penny.
He had 2 years in a row where he had 14 goals and 10 assists, right? And it wouldn't surprise me if we got that kind of return out of Saka, especially if he's on pens, which he was at the end of last season. So 8 million, 11 goals, 9 assists. For whatever reason, I'm feeling Mount a little more. I think it's because I already have an 8 million Arsenal player in Jesus that I'm strongly considering. Yep. And spending 16 million on Arsenal attackers feels like too much. So the player I'm looking at, which is hardly off the beaten path, is Gabriel Martinelli, who was just so fun to watch at times last year. He's 6 million, so he's very affordable. You know what? Why in my notes did I put Gabriel, the defender, and Gabriel Martinelli together? That was not a smart move.
Yeah. But you can mix and match.
Gabriel Martinelli, 6 million, 6 goals and 7 assists last year. Has been a go-to starter at left wing for Arsenal in the summer. So good, reasonable, and also the Smith Rowe.
Yeah.
I got there. Just took me a second. Smith Rowe has been injured most of preseason, so very unlikely that he plays. At least at the get-go. Mm-hmm. And so Martinelli, it's like he's got that spot. There's a little bit of talk that Nketiah could possibly play a little left wing as well. But I think this is where having 5 subs this year will make a difference because Nketiah could come in for Jesus or he could come in for Martinelli.
Yeah.
And ultimately, Smith Rowe will be competition there as well. But I think Martinelli's a fairly safe pick early on. Really talented, 6 goals, 7 assists, as I noted before. And he's another player who it feels like there's more to come. You know, do you like Martinelli?
I think I do. My story has been told about Arsenal. I think it's because I'm spending too much of my time watching my beloved Martin Odegaard that I'm not seeing so much what Martinelli is.
I don't even have in my notes here.
I noticed that. I really noticed that. No, I like Martinelli, and he plays with that level of verve and confidence. We were just talking about confidence as fantasy managers. Like, if I could manage my team the way Martinelli plays down the left wing, like he wants it, and I like that. And you want the hungry, selfish, confident player in your fantasy squad.
Interesting. Does that mean your fantasy style is box to box?
Yeah, I
free kick goal.
I manage my team like Odegaard, so I feel like, meaning I think this is my season.
Well, I hope so. So let's see. So defenders, I talked about Gabriel accidentally a minute ago, but Gabriel's available at $5 million. Had 5 goals last season, which is more than I remembered. 5 goals from Gabriel, 13 clean sheets. Interesting defensive setup for Arsenal this summer. So this guy William Saliba, they sent him a couple years ago. He's been playing in the French league. He was terrific. I think it was last year. He was won the best young player award or something like that in France. He was terrific.
Congratulations!
Congrats to him. Yeah. So I think he's like 20 years old now. There's a chance that we could see a back line, at least early on, that would be Zinchenko. We'll talk about more in a minute. Zinchenko starting at least at the beginning of the season in the left wing spot because their typical left wing is their typical left back is injured right now. And classic podcast, I forgot his name for a second. Kieran Tierney, Brandon,
famous Scottish bloke.
So Tierney's battling injury, almost certainly won't be ready to start in game week 1. So Zinchenko is just interesting in fantasy in general, right? Because he comes in at $5 million. Everyone thinks he's going to play out of position, which I think ultimately he will, in a good way, right? That he'll play. He's classified as a defender, but he'll play more like a forward and kind of keep moving.
So suddenly you're getting more points for his goals, et cetera. You're getting the clean sheet points as well for somebody who's playing as a midfielder. That is what we hope happens in the future.
He could end up with insane ownership at some point. So, Zinchenko had 4 assists last year, but it's really almost. It's more like you have to look at what he did for the Ukrainian national team to kind of have a sense of what we could be getting from him. I mean, he always looked good when he played for Man City, right? Like in that left back spot. But
especially when I confused him with Kevin De Bruyne, he looked like the best midfielder in Europe.
I don't know why when you see them next to each other, they don't look the same. But on the pitch, it's weirdly similar.
Yeah. It's the camera that's far away, right?
But Cancelo was on molten fire all of last season, so Zinchenko just couldn't get any minutes, and so. I suspect he probably forced this move a little bit. I don't know that Man City were necessarily eager to sell him on. But also, I mean, he's, I don't know. It's actually too bad. It's too bad that Ukraine didn't make the World Cup, even though they would have been in our group. That would have been terrifying. I did not want the U.S. to play the Ukraine. No one would have been rooting for us. We would have been the least popular. The entire world would have been rooting against the U.S. when we played the Ukraine.
Yeah, everybody wants to be liked in the World Cup. You also want to play against truly unmotivated teams.
Yeah, now we're playing Wales instead, because Wales beat them in the playoffs. So that's I can handle that. Famous last words, someone's gonna
Well, now that Gareth Bale is playing at the at LAFC, doesn't he have to have a U.S. passport to do that?
Basically an American.
Yeah. So exactly. Our team just got quality upgraded.
So Zinchenko should play at left back with Tierney not at full fitness to start the season, and then maybe just keep moving on. But I think he's brought into play. I think he's going to get a lot of minutes for Arsenal this season. I think he can fill a lot of different holes. I don't quite, it's kind of interesting to see what happens with him kind of in midfield. It's not clear to me. Could he occupy some of that Martinelli space? Does he come in for Odegaard at times? Does he play in more like a central midfield role?
I don't think it ever happens, to be honest with you.
That's how much you love Odegaard. You can't envision a world where that happens.
Yeah, well, I don't. I have not seen enough of Zinchenko in the midfield. I have to go back and watch.
There's just not enough spots in the pitch, right? I mean, at some point you're like, where is he going to play?
Yeah,
your 4 defenders. You got Jesus. You got Saka who's going to own that right wing spot.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
can you think of James Milner in his Liverpool career, where he is a midfield player, but he's often been brought in to just fill the gaps in the fullback positions when need be. And when he goes into the midfield, Milner doesn't really make any meaningful fantasy impact. And I would suspect the same for Zinchenko.
Well, we'll see. I'm high on him. There's a good chance he starts on my team in game week 1. So I'm gonna have some weird defenders in there, Brandon. My boy Sven Botman. Zinchenko. I mean, Zinchenko is hardly a controversial pick, but there's a good chance I have him in my squad. Gabriel Jesus, we talked about a little bit already, but I was 8 million, super cheap. 7th Premier League season. Did you know he'd played 6 years for Man City? That feels longer. Like
time flies when you're not playing.
Yeah,
very
exactly.
Much.
He's never really had the number 9 role to himself. In theory, it could have been last year, but Pep doesn't really even play with a forward. And at times he was playing in the right wing, sort of competing for minutes with Mahrez and others.
What an insult! Yeah. Like he's there waiting to play number 9, and then Pep's like, "You can leave because I'm actually ready to play a number 9 because I'm bringing in the most." Intentional number 9 of all time in Erling Haaland.
Exactly. It's very strange. It's very unusual. And so, again, that's why there's part of me that's like, I mean, it's good that they sold him, but yeah, I don't know. So, but anyway, 8 goals and 8 assists last year. So he can, he's a good, he can do a lot. He really is a talent, like a what's the word I'm looking for? Multifaceted player, sure. Brandon. I can see facets to his game. 8 goals and 8 assists last year, 9 and 5 the year before, 14 and 8 the year before that, and that was competing with Aguero for minutes. So I think any reasonable projection, I think you could see the assist drop a little bit and the goals go up. I think something like a 15 goal, 5 assist season for Jesus is very reasonable, and at 8 million, that's a reasonable return.
You'll take it.
Midfield spot, or
in
that forward spot.
Yeah.
Any other players I want to talk about? I mean, we have Ramsdale, 5 million, cooled down after a hot start. I think there are better options, in the defender spot. I think a lot of us had Ramsdale on the stretch. That was a lot of lost clean sheets.
Well, he was a house on fire to start there, and I think, as you say, with the Tierney injury. You've got good players that could come in and replace injured defenders for Arsenal, but it's going to be very unsettled to start. And it just seems like ripe for the blowing of a fantasy clean sheet with a random goal, and it's going to be very frustrating.
Got Smith Rowe, 10 goals last year, and Nketiah played really well down the stretch, but basically lost his spot to Jesus. And then Fabio Vieira, who they signed but is currently injured, not likely to start anyway, at least early on. So let's move into our number 3 club.
Number 3 club is Spurs. Now, North London has just been crushing the transfer window. I think Spurs look like a much improved team. They become
Tottenham Hotspur.
Tottenham Hotspur. And when Conte came in, of course, last season, just radically transformed the attitude and the approach for Spurs, and bringing in players like Kulusevski. Were strokes of genius, and I think the team has gotten even better over the summer thanks to Conte. And you look at what they're doing in the preseason, really compelling results. They're scoring tons of goals. What's interesting about the preseason goals and assists is every goal that Kane scores, it seems to be assisted by Son. Every goal that Son scores is Kane is involved.
Yeah.
So we are never rid of. They're the twin sons of FPL, Son and Kane. So I think we have to talk a little bit about how we reckon with that decision. How do Spurs start the season? Well, they start strong with the home match hosting Southampton. We saw under Mourinho that hilarious smashing of Southampton. Not the first that Hasenhüttl has seen. Then they play Chelsea in game week 2, followed Wolves, Forest, West Ham, Fulham. I would call this a good start for Spurs.
I think it's a great start, and I think they are. They are the one team that I think actually could win the league this year, outside of the top 2. I mean, spoiler alert: we've got Liverpool and Man City are top 2.
Yeah.
I think of those 2, this is the one club that you could actually see just have a great run. If they weren't in the Champions League, I think it'd be even more likely. But I think that's gonna, but they have more squad depth now, right? I mean, as you'll talk about, I don't want to step on your toes here.
Right, yeah, we will talk about squad depth, and Richarlison is emblematic of that. But I don't really care about fixtures with Spurs. We're going to have Spurs attackers for the entire season, much as we'll want for City and Liverpool, because regardless of the fixture, they're going to be scoring goals. I think Conte, he loves to play defensive counterattacking style that suits Kane and Son, but I think it's been. This is just an incredible array of attacking talent that Conte has a chance to work with. Who are the new players? What we're talking about this great signing window. Ivan Perisic comes in. Perisic comes in from Inter Milan. Yes, he's getting on in age at 33 years old. We expect him to play in the left wing back position.
Right.
Last season for Inter, 8 goals, 7 assists. Just looking at his career stats for his last two clubs, Inter and Bayern Munich, 49 goals and 41 assists in total in 206 appearances for Inter. 31 goals and 22 assists in 133 appearances for Bayern Munich. His history is just like, as he plays full seasons for these clubs, his output is incredible. He's a monster of a attacking wingback player, and I think once he is deemed to be fully fit and a mainstay in the lineup, we will truly have to reckon with Perisic in this. Much like I'm going to have to reckon with the pronunciation of his name.
To bring all your numbers together, right? And you're basically talking about a 5.5 million defender with 80 goals and 60 assists in his last 300 appearances.
So the skepticism around him going into game week 1 is how quickly can he bet into the system? How fit is he? Conte wants to play just like a very athletic style. So for me, I feel like I'm going to try and work around Perisic before we start the season. But there he is. Great pick on the whole. Richarlison comes in. He's priced at 8.5. Talking about Spurs with last year's FPL winner, Jamie Piggott. He's a massive Spurs fan. And he thought, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Richarlison doesn't start every match, even though he comes in for a huge fee. I just think there are it's not like we have to talk. We don't have to diminish Richarlison. All we have to do is say Kulusevski is 0.5 cheaper, and also Son and Kane. These are the guys that we need to worry about. And I don't think there's enough value with Richarlison here to say I'm going to get a Spurs cover at the cheaper price of 8.5.
Be nice to see Kulusevski's name pop up in some of these preseason returns. You know,
it would.
A lot of people are talking for him, but I would like to see him come. I don't put too much stock in preseason. I really don't. But it would be nice if he had popped up with a random hat trick in one of these games. You know?
Did the full Darwin Nunez.
Yeah, exactly.
Clement Lenglet. You got some nice rhyming going on with this center back coming in from.
That could be Clement Lenglet, right?
Clement Lenglet, on loan from Barcelona. Interesting rotation probably happening with the center backs. I mean, honestly, how long was Eric Dyer going to be able to hold down that position? Yeah. So you could see maybe it is Romero and Lenglet. I'm going to need to get some guidance on that one, starting in the center back position. And Jed Spence, I think this is the guy because he's priced at 4.5. He spent last season at Forest, coming up through the championship playoff on loan from Middlesbrough. Really young, 21 years old, plays on the right back. But he's just really athletic. He fits that Conte mold. And I think as soon as he fits into the starting lineup, he's going to be maybe a must-have. Okay. So Jed Spence, watch for him. And what more do we need to say about Harry Kane and Son Heung-min? I think it's really how much do you want to pay? Yeah. And for me, I'm a believer in Harry Kane. I think that just looking at previous seasons, it just seems like an anomaly that Son's going to finish with more points than Kane. And the fact that I can get Kane at 11.5 is really all I need to know. So Kane is my guy to start this season. I mean, given that they are basically trading goals and assists in the preseason, are you going to spend any time trying to pair these guys together in a game week 1 draft?
People have made an argument for it. I don't think it's terrible, but no, I'm looking at Kane as well. I mean, at this point, the momentum has shifted so far towards Kane that part of me wants to go with Haaland now, who is suddenly the less popular of the options. But I'm kind of looking at Kane myself, especially because he's been so strong in preseason, which hasn't always been the case with him. All right, Brandon. Well, I like this. I think, like you said, what more needs to be said about Kane and Sons? Let's move on to our number 2 club. Yeah. In the top 3, this is why this is why it's actually useful to go up, because when you end with these clubs, we all have strong thoughts already in everybody here. But Liverpool, good season, right? They won 2 cups, made it to the Champions League final, kind of ran out of gas at the end. Same with the Premier League a little bit. They sort of maybe this last year probably was the year for them to get their second title under Klopp, and didn't quite pull it off. Now Mane is off. Alisson and Jota are currently dealing with injuries. Great start to the season, though. Fulham, Palace, Bournemouth, Newcastle, Everton, Wolves. I mean, it's really hard not to see a way where you don't have 3 players from Liverpool to start your season. Yep. Now that Alisson's injured, I may be a little less excited about the Robbo or Van Dijk, who I've been sort of like why? Van Dijk is just so incredibly consistent.
Why not Van Dijk?
I guess it's just that they're too close in price, right? You got a little more. But, you have Trent, Robbo. I mean, it's funny to even talk about these players, right? Because we all know so much about them already. Yeah. But Trent
who you got, Josh?
Trent,
I think is the question.
Yeah, I think I will note, though, Trent. I mean, it's like, I was sort of like, maybe I won't have Trent early on, but it's just a reminder that he finished 3rd overall in points last year. 3rd in all players. Every single player in the Premier League finished 3rd. And he's 7.5 million. Everybody else who has done that kind of return is like 11 or 12 million in the game. So you get like a 5 million discount on him over everybody else. How can you not have that player? It's very hard to build an argument. Yeah. And Robbo finished 8th overall in points, right? He's at 7 million. He's even cheaper. And then you look at Van Dijk, he's only 2 points back of Robbo. So maybe you just have those 3 players. I don't know. But then, of course, you have Mo Salah, 13 million, 23 goals, 14 assists. Yeah. The unquestioned alpha now with Mane gone. So he should do even better. He could have like 37 goals this year. Yeah. And they play Fulham in game week 1. He's the clear captain.
He's going to go full Mitrovic. 43 goals, I predict.
Yeah, exactly. You got Jota. Maybe eventually, it could be a Metro season for him. Let's see. Jota did have 15 goals and 7 assists. I mean, but no one's really talking about him because of Darwin Nunez. He's now a 9 million forward as well. And it's not totally clear how many starts we're going to get from Jota. Even last year when he was great, he wasn't necessarily the most consistent starter, which didn't work out too badly in fantasy, but it's risky.
He fits in so well with Klopp's style, but minutes continue to be it. And because he's not fit to start the season, it's like losing ground. It's like we always talk about what's the work from home policy versus going into the office. If you go into the office, do you have a better chance of getting a promotion now? Yeah. And Nunez is going into the office, whereas Jota might be working from home.
Exactly. So Nunez, 9 million forward, 4 goals, and a recent friendly, as everybody seems to have known and talked about it. It perked everyone's ears up a little bit, Something about Blake Bloomer, to my eyes anyway. He's 23, but he's only had 2 years in top division football. Really exploded the last couple seasons at Benfica. He had 26 goals and 28 league appearances last year. Yeah. He was a little injured at the start of the season, so he kind of came in late. But 26 and 28 is insane, no matter what league you're talking about. So he's really promising. I think because Luis Diaz, the player that I really like, is available at 8 million, classified as a midfielder, so Luis would fit into your team. Also easier to move to other players if it doesn't work out. Yep. He had 4 goals and 3 assists, which doesn't look that impressive, but you got to remember he came in January, and he was competing with Mane and Jota for spots. Mane's gone and Jota's injured. So it's a clear lane for Diaz.
You just think that if you compare Diaz to whatever you think about Nunez, these guys are probably going to get this around the same number of goals, I'm guessing, to start the season. And Diaz, by virtue of being a midfielder, is getting more points. So I predict he'll finish on more points than somebody like Nunez, if it's close.
One more signing, Fabio Carvalho, 5.5 million midfielder, won't start, but do you have any quick thoughts on him?
Yeah, as a Fulham supporter, so goes Harvey Elliott. I mean, and we lost Harvey Elliott as one of our great young players to Liverpool, and you wondered, will you ever see this guy again? Well, of course, under Klopp, he knows what to do with young talent, and Harvey Elliott suddenly was just like incredible when he worked his way into the starting 11. And Carvalho is just as good a player, probably better, and I think for fantasy he plays a little farther up the pitch. He's more of a number 10. So I expect big things, but yeah, he probably has to be reprogrammed by Klopp over the course of a season before we see enough of him to really consider him as a fantasy option.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Interesting. One to watch though, right? All right, brings us to our number 1 club.
All right, so we stuck our neck out with the bottom half clubs, or like putting Chelsea at number 5. We're not sticking our neck out with number 1. It's pretty obvious. It's going to be Manchester City. They basically had the most efficient transfer window of the summer, you would say. Like they strengthened where they needed to. They brought in Erling Haaland, and they brought in Calvin Phillips for that defensive mid role. I'm not sure that Rodri is going to be immediately displaced by Phillips, but I think there's at least now some competition there, and I think maybe you look at Rodri and say, You didn't play hard enough. You weren't mentally tough enough for
Injured
City.
all the time, though, too.
I think City not winning the Champions League may have been down to some issues like that.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yes, I thought you were talking about Phillips. But, yeah, Rodri for sure.
Oh, yeah. Phillips, I think, is a great player, and I think he might be, he's very dynamic. So we'll see how that competition unfolds. It's really not FPL related, but just a ridiculous start for City. Away West Ham, followed by Bournemouth, Newcastle, Palace, Forest, Villa, until they get to Spurs in game week 7. Game week 7, which is, of course, the same day as Fest NYC. We'll be watching that live with our listeners. So you've got to have City players in your game week 1 draft. There's no way around it. It's Erling Haaland. Many different drafts that we've come up with. It basically comes down to, will you have Kane or will you have Haaland? Because we're kind of committed to having Gabriel Jesus.
Hard to have both. It's possible, but it's hard.
I think if you go with Haaland, you're going without Salah in my mind, because I feel like Kane. Then you go Kane, Jesus, the full year of the forward TM setup. But Haaland has everything to prove. Still young at 22 years old. He now has to start winning things in order to establish himself as in the running for the Ballon d'Or. And I expect if he can stay healthy, and like our friend Eric Freeman is quick to point out, a Haaland's spotty injury record, I think if he stays healthy, he's going to be a monster in fantasy. And that's really kind of fills me with some dread as somebody who's considering not having him to start.
Yeah.
But just 61 goals in 66 total appearances for Dortmund.
That's insane.
It's basically if he plays, he scores. So you have to respect that. And then the other new signing in the attack is Julian Alvarez, who is classed as a forward. We'd think of him as kind of like a Salah-esque right winger. And I think he's who is the well, whatever. It doesn't matter who I'm thinking of. I think the point with him is that he's a classic, going to take a while to bed in sort of player. Watch out for Julian Alvarez as he comes in. But he's Argentinian, 22 years old, youngish player. Scored 17 goals last year for River Plate. Calvin Phillips, we talked about him, and backup goalkeeper to probably fill the spot of Zach Stefan, who is on the outs after some miserable performances for City. Stefan Ortega comes in. Good guys. Haaland. I think Kevin De Bruyne is just... He's actually been the guy in preseason. He's been scoring and assisting. He had 2 goals against Club America. I mean, what does he have to do to get into our squads?
It's expensive, just hard to fit him in.
I think for me, the replacement is just a replacement of convenience with Jack Grealish, $7 million. He got the assist on Haaland's goal in the preseason for City. So does that portend to fantasy returns to come? I am leaning toward getting Grealish into my game week 1 squad. We're watching the Community Shield tomorrow, and all will be revealed then with Pep's starting lineup.
I doubtful. Yeah, never is.
João Cancelo at $7 million just had as you mentioned earlier, Josh, a barn burner of a season. 1 goal, 11 assists, and 19 clean sheets. City's top FPL point scorer, if you can believe that. So I think Cancelo is veering on must-have. Ederson, 5.5, very strong premium goalkeeper option. Some bad guys. Ilkay Gundogan, 7.5. That's kind of a kill shot to his fantasy viability. And then there's Riyad Mahrez and Phil Foden, both at $8 million, and they're just like quintessential trap players.
Foden could be awesome this year, and he's cheap, but he didn't play because he's not vaccinated, so he couldn't travel to the U.S. And I feel like that puts him a step back.
A lot to be said for just super high ceilings for Mahrez and Foden, but I think I'd rather spend my time trying to figure out how to get De Bruyne or Haaland
or Ederson. I got Ederson on my radar right now.
Yeah. But Grealish, Grealish has got to kick on this season. He really has no choice, especially if we want Southgate to consider him for any minutes, because he kind of got done dirty in the Euros. So there it is, City number 1. Lots of options there. I feel like between Liverpool, Spurs, and City, we have to look to have around 6 6 to 7 players from those squads in our
Throw
game week
Arsenal
1
in
team.
there too. That's
And
like,
of course,
10
Arsenal.
That's 10 players from 4 squads.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I mean, to me, figuring out how to balance Spurs and Man City feels like the big question for me right now. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. We really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the podcast, if you want to support the podcast, get access to bonus pods and chat with us in the Slack. Join that Last Cheater Standing League, Brandon. You got to join before game week 1 to take advantage of that. Go to patreon.com/alwayscheating. To become a patron, it's very easy. You just go there and sign up.
Go to patreon.com/alwayscheating.
I'll say it. Yeah, I said it 4 times. All right. Do you want to thank our producer, Patreon?
I do. Before I do that, I do want to thank our new Patreon supporters, Shalen Kadakia, Drew Mayer, Tony Chandler, Daniel Brennan, Brandon Perdue, Robert Cowberry, Terrence O'Donnell, Chris O'Connor, and Dan Barnes. And, of course, as always, thanks to our producer patrons there, Mike DePietro, Trevor Ingerson, our buddy Chris Howell, the Big Gaffer, Bobas Kuhn, James Holland, Dave Wagner-Lodahl, Nick Wright, Lazarus, everybody watching on video can now see how we have to read these names off of our computer screens. Jesse Halstead, Bruce Kerr, Brian Chin, Rich Evans, Blair Jacobson, Todd Byerly, Mikey Uong, Shiv Majorio, Andy Portlock, Dan Parsons at FPL Merch. We want to shout out at FPL Merch for cool things that he's doing.
We'll talk more about him in the next
All right,
pod.
coming up. Kerry Swanson, also a producer. Jefferson Turner, managed by Lasso. Francis Mann, Sam Shower, Jeremy Spiker, Caleb Robbie, Lee Hickman, Velger Paulson Kruger, Alex Holcomb, James Keatley, The Saint, Bob Fox, Craig Jackson, James Conroy, and our newest producers, Ashalan F. Kadakia and Terrence O'Donnell. Rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Follow us on Twitter at HellCheaters. Go to Instagram, see what we've been up to here at the Wynn Las Vegas and the Blue Wire Studios. For all this information and more, visit our website, alwayscheating.com. And remember, check us out at fest-nyc.com for an event happening in New York City on September 10th.
All right. See you there. Thanks, Brandon. And thanks to the Blue Wire Studio folks. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Blue Wire. Hail Cheaters.
Bye.